Welcome back to the program. All good news from your front as far as the campaign goes. Bad news for Gavin. $250 billion in fraud. Steve, talk us through this.
So Happy New Year, Benny. Just a quick reflection on your conversation with my friend Byron Donalds. I'm just thinking, how cool would it be a year from now? He's governor of Florida. I'm governor of California. And we are competing to attract families and businesses to come to our states instead of California sending them to Florida. I think that's the kind of healthy competition that will help make America truly great when you have Florida and California on the right track for freedom. So I was just excited to think about that a year from now.
Steve, I want to talk about fraud, but I want to talk about something that was top of my feed this morning. Other than our roasting of Gavin Newsom, that was a lot of fun and got us the #1 trend in the world. woke up to that. That was a blast. It is some billionaires in California, virtually every billionaire in California, founder, the people that make California still profitable, the people that build great companies in California, which it has always attracted smart and endeavorous people. They're fleeing. They're fleeing in mass. And maybe it's just because of my timeline on X, Steve, but every single morning, because of this billionaire's tax that would tax unrealized gains. So these guys build a great company, you get $20 billion worth of stock, right? Because the company becomes very successful. And then California is saying, you owe us 5% every single year. And so you're having to pay billions of dollars a year. A lot of people don't have that kind of cash. Just the suggestion is causing an absolute fleeing of California, of Google founders and so many others. What would this wealth tax, billionaire's tax, which will of course become a millionaire's tax and then a thousandaires tax, what would this look like under a Steve Hilton administration of California?
Dead, buried in the ground, 10 feet under. I mean, it's just insanely stupid and counterproductive. It captures everything that's wrong with how the state is currently run. If you look at the anatomy of it. So what is this actually? It's a proposed ballot initiative from the unions, the SEIU and others, right? The unions are saying they need this extra money that they'd get from the billionaire's tax because of cuts in healthcare funding from Donald Trump in Washington. Of course, it's always Trump's fault, everything. But wait a minute, taxpayers are paying $13 billion a year in California for free full scope Medicaid for illegal immigrants, which they deny in Washington. Remember all that conversation that shut down? Oh, you can't do that. Can't pay healthcare for illegal immigrants. Newsom brags about it. That's $13 billion spent on that, which of course I wouldn't spend. So he saved that money. That's why they say they need this. So what have they done? They've put out this proposal. They need to collect nearly 1 million signatures by May, even to get it on the ballot. But they've put in this thing a retrospective aspect of it, which means that it would kick in at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. So even whether it doesn't matter whether it's passed or not, whether it even gets on the ballot or not, the huge hit to the incomes of these great entrepreneurs is so great. They've already left. Why is that insane? Because already, despite what the left say, nearly half of the income tax in California is paid by the top 1% already. So what you've already seen by this long list of people leaving, we've already lost the revenue. It's already gone. We're doing a calculation right now of the billions of dollars that they've already sent out of California just by the threat of it. It's so unbelievably insane. So all of this has to change. We've already got the highest taxes in the country. That's why families and businesses are leaving to Florida. And it's why the new businesses of the future that used to think of California as their home are not considering that anymore. It's just too expensive. Taxes are too high. You get harassed the whole time. They hate it. It's so insane. That's why I think we're going to win this year, because people can see that we can't go on like this. It really will be the death of the greatest, most beautiful and biggest state in the country. We've got to turn things around. People see that now. That's why I think we're leading.
Yes, I mean, we do call it the crown jewel. It was at one time a paradise, And in 60 years of Democrat mismanagement has been turned into a third world hellscape. And that is evident in so much data, but this is just one of my favorites. It never lies. The U-Haul ranking,
Exactly.
California, the absolute last for like the 10th year in a row of U-Hauls leaving the state and not returning. How do you turn this around, Steve?
Well, first of all, I mean, and you contrast that with this delusional Newsom, his state of the state speech last Thursday, where he says we're a policy blueprint for the nation. And this guy's a pathological liar, apart from a total failure on every front. I put these t-shirts, we're selling t-shirts, MUGA t-shirts, most useless governor in America. That's Gavin Newsom. Here's the good news. When I'm elected and I'm there from this time next year, cleaning up the mess that he's left behind, I'll be doing a double service, obviously to the people of California, where I'm cleaning up the mess for real, but also to the people of the whole country, because I will be exposing just how useless and destructive he was as a warning to the whole of America. So the way we turn it around is, first of all, we've got to win the primary. I'm the leading Republican. Another piece of data we're releasing today, by far ahead of all candidates, including all the Democrats, on fundraising. It's a big state. You need a lot of money. I'm leading that race as well. Very important in California, especially when you've got the Democrats all funded by the corrupt union relationships they have. So we're leading in the polls. We're leading on fundraising. It's looking good. We've got to win the primary in June. Then in November, look, there's a majority for change in California. And I think we're going to turn that into an actual defeat of this corrupt, failed 16 years of Democrat one-party rule. Then you get to work. And the model here is exactly as President Trump has been doing it at the federal level, which is you control the executive branch. We'll still probably have a Democrat majority in the legislature. I'm fighting hard to elect Republican candidates there as well. But let's just assume there's Democrat control of the legislature. As governor, you appoint thousands of people to hundreds of agencies, and a lot of the pain and nightmare that's hurting every family and business, the insane climate crusade that's given us the highest gas prices and highest electric bills in the country, the harassment of small business owners like I used to run restaurants back in the day in England, and I've been a business owner most of my life. The pain of that's coming for every small business owner, it's coming from these agencies. Some of them have become nationally famous, the Coastal Commission, and all of these agencies. We're going to kick out the climate fanatics and the bureaucrats who just want to harass everybody, and put in place, if we can't shut them down, by the way, and just reduce their operations by defunding them or massively scaling them back, we're going to put in there common sense people, pro-family, pro-business, who are going to start getting rid of this incredible weight of bureaucracy and nonsense that's crushing the soul and spirit of California. So there's actually a lot you can do through that strong use of executive action. Remember, I've worked inside of a government before. I was senior advisor to the Prime Minister back in the UK in 10 Downing Street. I know how it works. I understand. And we're going to be ready on day one, just as President Trump was this time around, to make big changes in California.
So you did a press conference last week where you exposed $250 billion worth of fraud that you have found in your own independent research. Gavin Newsom says there is no fraud in California. Your response?
What a joke. You can't believe a word he says, literally. Except when he says we're number one. Yeah, we're number one in poverty, number one unemployment rate in the country. I mean, it's just number one in people leaving. What a joke. Look, here's the story of the fraud. When the Minnesota scandal first broke, that was around Thanksgiving last year. I remember going out and saying, knowing what I knew then about California, you can be sure that however bad it is in Tim Walz's Minnesota, it's 1,000 times worse in Gavin Newsom's California. That's obviously a rhetorical statement, but I said about putting numbers on that. So December the 3rd last year, we launched an anonymous whistleblower line. I mean, a big part of that Minnesota story, of course, was the whistleblowers through the years that Walz and the Democrat machine tried to silence and intimidate in disgusting ways. We've been hearing about that at the congressional hearing last week. So I set up this anonymous line, califraud.com. Since then, just over a month, we've had hundreds of anonymous tips just with our resources as a campaign. We're not in government. We don't have all of that resource. We've been following that up along with a guy called Herb Morgan, who's running for state control, a very important position in California with the power to audit every single organization receiving state money. So we looked at the tips, which really gave us a roadmap to look at categories of fraud. And they're really interesting, contracting, wage inflation in the school system, public sector pension abuse, all of the climate insanity and the hidden taxes there, huge list of things, right? Where we then looked at the budgets for those things and the scope and scale of that activity. Then we looked at published data already from places like the state auditor. Some of these numbers, again, have become well known. 24 billion in fraud in the homelessness budget, 55 billion lost during the lockdowns from the employment department. We added all of that up and made an estimate of what we think the fraud is. That's our $250 billion number. We published that in a report called Califraudia last Monday. Now we're following up. We're getting hold of those people. We're going into the details, and we're not going to let this go because it's connected to what we were talking about earlier, which is the taxes, and it gets to that central question, which is, how is it that we can have the highest taxes in the country and yet the worst outcomes on everything? The highest poverty, the highest unemployment, worst business climate. It's because of all this, because they've created this bloated welfare state. They're signing people up. They want more and more people dependent on the government, so they have them in their grip, and that's bloated the government, and the money's coming from the successful, hardworking small businesses and taxpayers, and it's going to their welfare state. And we're going to take a sledgehammer to that, and this whole process of exposing the fraud. That's what's going to give us our marching orders for how we get to tackle it and get rid of it.
Just an obscenity on the people of
An
California that are already taxed.
Our money. It's our money.
Taxed so high. Yes. Highest gas tax. I mean, I love doing this, but to the live chat, like, what's the gas prices where you live? And what's the gas?
$5-6. It's insane. I mean,
there are as of last week, Steve, there were 14 states. It's probably more like 20 states now where gas is below, the average gas price is below $2 a gallon.
Yeah,
what is it in California?
$5, $6 in LA the other day I saw. So here's what's going on there. It actually was the first policy pledge that I made in my campaign, which is to dismantle the Democrats' climate crusade, which is the reason we have the highest gas prices in the country by far. We have abundant oil reserves in California, actually. A lot of people don't know that. We have abundant oil reserves that these insane, cruel, destructive Democrats are keeping in the ground, so that right now we have higher gas prices, even though we have abundant oil reserves, than Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it's just absolutely insane. Who's paying the price for that, by the way? It's not the lefty Democrat climate crusaders in Marin County in the Bay Area tapping away on their MacBooks and as they work from home, pushing their insanity. It's working Californians. It's hardworking Californians driving their cars and their trucks, blue collar workers, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. They're paying for this. And that's why my first pledge was to get rid of all of that. And my pledge in California is $3 gas. Okay, I say that on a national show, and most people. I remember I went on with Sean Hannity and he I could see in his eyes, what's so good about that? Most of the country. I think it's right to say there are now 40 states where gas is $3 or below. For us, $3 is nearly cutting it in half, but we can get there if we just stop this insane climate crusade. And the same with electric bills. So it's just all of this is self-inflicted pain. And the people who are really suffering are blue-collar workers, the working class. That's why the revolution we're going to have in California, very, very similar to what you've seen in the Trump era, which is the Republican Party becoming the workers' party. And in particular in California, that's going to be working-class Latinos who are particularly hurt by all of this. And then you add into that their fury at the gender extremism that their kids are being subjected to in schools. These are people of strong faith and family, and they just cannot stand what is going on. So it's the economic pain, it's the insult to their values. All of that, I think, is fueling this revolution that's going to bring a big change in California this year.
Tim Walz has dropped out of the gubernatorial race in Minnesota due to the fraud investigations against him. There's going to be more of that. More bombshell video dropped today. And Tim Walz, many are saying that his political career is over. The most powerful congressman from Minnesota, Tom Emmer, saying that he will most likely leave office in handcuffs if he doesn't resign early. Do you predict the same for Gavin Newsom, given the fact that he is now under federal investigation for fraud in California? And as you said, it is done on a nation state level. It is 10x what is in Minnesota.
And it's the corruption as well. I mean, that's why these investigations are so important. We've got very, very strong, the Department of Justice you've got some really strong Californians in there who know what's been going on. And to put from Harmeet Dillon, Bill Asaley, the US attorney. So this is really strong action. And that's what needs to happen. And so he thinks he's all set up for running for president. And it's very interesting to me when you see the way that the media covers him. They have no interest, it seems, in exposing his actual record. And it's all about whether he's, social media trolling of the president is effective or not, and it's winning him points with them. That's how they cover him. And that's not going to last, because once we start exposing what he's done, and you have these criminal prosecutions and investigations, there's no way, people say, there's no way we can put this guy in the White House. He just has a complete inability to get to grips with even the sort of most basic parts of governing. Can't do it. Everything is a disaster. And on top of that, just has either participated in or turned a blind eye to fraud and theft of taxpayer money on an epic scale, on a criminal scale. So yes. I don't think it's going to stop there. By the way, one thing that I've promised to do is to have a COVID accountability commission. I mean, we're not going to forget what he did in the lockdowns. And I always say lockdowns, not pandemic, because you didn't need to have the lockdowns. It wasn't the pandemic. People say, oh, since the pandemic, it was the lockdowns that did the damage. We had the longest and most cruel and destructive in California than anywhere else, especially the school closures. Why did you have the school closures? Because of Gavin Newsom's corrupt relationship with the teacher unions. And we're going to investigate that as well. Is it the case that millions of kids have had their lives ruined, their prospects affected by what Gavin Newsom did to pay off his donors, the teacher unions? We're not going to let that slide either. So there's a lot of investigating to come on Gavin Newsom. And when I'm governor, it's going to be happening right as he tries to get going with his presidential campaign.
Yeah, remarkable that Gavin Newsom's wife had one of these, was on the board of so many of these little nonprofits and NGOs that were getting lavish government funding. They were able to scrub so much of that information. They're doing, I think, a job trying to delete or obscure from the public where all these monies are going.
There's a very important piece of corruption that people need to understand about California. That you have this thing which I couldn't believe when I first heard it. I heard it a couple of years ago, actually, when I was first getting into all this. It's called behested payments. Behested payments. It's totally legal, totally corrupt. And this is what happens. The governor can literally phone people and organizations up and said, would you please give money to this or that cause? Just ask for the money. And it's totally legal. Guess where some of that money went? Exactly as you say, to his wife's nonprofit, to his pet causes. It's so obscenely corrupt. And that's the kind of swamp of corruption that Gavin Newsom's been swimming in for 16 years, remember. He did 8 years as lieutenant governor. And that we're going to expose all of that.
It seems like California is finally at a boiling point, Steve, and you are the man for the job. Steve Hilton for governor right here. It is remarkable. We're seeing so much energy right now. There's just very, very negative energy for infinity criminal immigration, for fraud at a state level, for corruption. The American public is really zeroed in on exposing it. It's wonderful to see the Trump administration also taking some pretty strong actions in California too. That U.S. attorney there in L.A. is doing some great job.
Yeah, Bill Asaley, fantastic, good friend of mine.
Yes. Okay. Well, Steve, we look forward to seeing you this week.
Yes.
We're going to be out. We're going to be out and working on everything. I'll give you a call today, and we'll talk through what we have planned.
See you soon.
Godspeed, Steve. Thank you.